Welcome to week 6 of ENG 317. We are cruising right along. This is a transitional week where we are going to start considering not only text, but how you can incorporate visuals to underscore your communication, to supplement your communication, to reach a larger audience. You think about all the different learning styles and how we all engage with information differently, and adding visuals can be a really useful way to increase your audience's understanding of whatever it is you're trying to convey. There are lots of things to look at this week in Brightspace. There's a great video that illuminates in a hysterical way the need for clarity and precision whenever you're creating a set of instructions. And I also share with you a PowerPoint regarding visuals, which will have limited use. We're going to use visuals in a very limited week this way, but going forward, they're going to become a larger part of the work we do in this class. So that might even be something you go back and refer to again later. So what we're going to be exploring this week, or how we're going to be exploring adding visuals, I should say, is through this assignment 4, which is simply creating a brief set of instructions. And the directions, I think, are pretty straightforward here. You're going to create a set of instructions on how to operate something, how to make something, how to complete something, an activity, a procedure. I think the best way to brainstorm is to really think about the things that you're good at, things that you kind of take for granted even. The only thing that can be tricky about that is we tend to be very dismissive of that which we are good at because we are good at it. So we decide that it's just easy. I would point out to you that it is not. It's easy for you because you are good at it. But for those of the rest of us, we might really benefit from a set of instructions. This is not an instruction manual. This is a very, very brief set of instructions. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, okay? In terms of the parameters of the assignment, let's look at that. You will be creating a title, so we are very clear on what it is we will be making, doing, etc., etc. A list of everything we need, the complete set of instructions, and at least one visual. That's the new addition. Also, any kind of warnings that are necessary. As per usual, looking at all the available help that you have on Brightspace and in your textbook is going to be important. And then there are some things that are really, really going to challenge your use of language. So one of the things we've been doing is we've been writing, we've been really conversing with folks, right, in our letter and in our memo. In our resume, we started to maybe get into some bullets, that kind of thing. And now you're really going to go even smaller with that. It's going to be a really important thing to think about keeping your instructions very clear, very easy to understand, and really start thinking about this idea of white space and using it to further break down and illuminate the individual steps. That's going to be really important. Keeping everything parallel and consistent. So consistency is going to serve to create a smoother path for your reader. So keep your language consistent, keep your verb usage consistent. That's all going to make for a more successful outcome for your reader. A major point or rule about visuals is they should be near that which they are illuminating. So if your visual actually is capturing maybe a step in a process, make sure you put it near that step. Think back to some of your textbooks. There's nothing more annoying, right, than having the textbook refer to chart number 25A, and 25A is like 3 pages ahead, and you've got to flip back and forth. And no, you want to keep your visual as near to what it's illuminating as possible. If you pull a visual offline, make sure you give credit for that, cite it, right? That's going to be really important as well. And really think about some of the concepts that are discussed in the visual video to make sure that this whole set of instructions looks good. What do I mean by looks good? Well, I have some examples for you. This first example is from a baby book, a Dr. Spock baby book from the late 80s. And interestingly, even though it's a how-to book, it's written in a very narrative style, as you can see. But that becomes kind of problematic when you get to 280, the tub bath, because we don't have time for narrative storytelling when we have a slippery infant that we're trying to bathe, especially if it's our first baby, right? So this really illustrates the importance of having that those short, brief bullets or spaced out commands that allow you to follow them really easily, because you can see how messy this gets and how hard it would be to actually read this while in the process of bathing a baby. It does give you a list of necessary items, so it does do that. But the narrative style is really, really challenging. It's also very tight. There's a lot of text here, and that can feel very overwhelming. Further, this illustration is not enormously clear. It's a little too stylized. You really want an illustration that communicates. And this one doesn't communicate a whole lot. And it's also has a very limited audience. As a left-handed person, I can assure you that I would not be able to hold a baby that way. So that picture does not do me any good. So that's one example. Let's look at another. This is an example, stand by. All right, here's another example. This is an example without a visual, which right away you can see makes it tougher to follow these recipes. This is from an old 1970s cookbook, one of those kinds that would be used as a fundraiser, just written by local people in the area. This was for a Weld church. And some of these recipes might be really unfamiliar to us. They're unfamiliar to me. And I would like a visual to understand what the final product was supposed to look like. That's point number one. Point number two, keep all of your ingredients or, things that you need in one place. Here I might be saying, I'm going to make Etta Olson's fruit cocktail squares. I have all these ingredients and I start and I mix it all together. I'm already in trouble because there's a lack of precision here. I have no idea what size grease pan, but say I figure that out. And now I'm going to keep going. Wait a minute. Brown sugar and I don't have any chopped nuts. Why wasn't that up here in the ingredients list? You see how it's choppy, it's jumbled. It forces the reader to go back and forth. Don't want it. Another example to pull here. In the pineapple squares, we have all the ingredients listed at once, which is great. And we have a little bit more direction, which I think is useful. Although I would point out that this is also just put into a grease pan with no dimensions, which is problematic. But also the problem with the pineapple squares is that we have one small can of crushed pineapple. If you've been consuming grocery store goods for a long time, like I have, I am 53, you know that products have changed sizes quite dramatically. So a small can of crushed pineapple now is not going to be the same size as a small can then, nor might we all perceive small in the same way. So again, specificity is really important. Also important to try to avoid brand names if possible. Instead of saying Crisco, you could say vegetable shortening. For all of you youngsters, who don't know what oleo is, this also just kind of shows how old this book is. Oleo is an old-fashioned term for margarine. So this is a wonderful piece of history, but definitely leaves some room for improvement in terms of actual instructions. Moving on, we have the opposite. We have a set of instructions with no words and just visuals, and this is how Lego works. Lego has users in all countries, so many different languages, and they also include pre-readers. So instead of using language at all, they just rely on visuals. They break it down very, very small, as you can see here, and it's very clear. They do with pictures what I'm trying to get you all to do with words. It's very spare. You need 4 of these, 2 of these, you go like that, you go like that, and you put it here. And then you go to step 5, So that's all well and good. I would argue, as someone who is not very visual, that if you added some supporting text to this, you could expand your audience. It would be easier for me to understand these building instructions if it was put into words. So you've now seen an example with no words and an example with no pictures, and you can see that both of them have limitations. Then we have an example that has both. So this is for hooking up your car, pairing your cell phone with your Bluetooth in your car. And this does a few things very, very well. It has a very clear title that explains what you're trying to do, what your goal is, and it identifies the different pieces, and then it takes you through the steps one by one with words and with pictures. It's broken up with white space, and it's brief. It's briefly worded. The pictures are accurate and clear and don't have any extraneous anything with them. So those are some different examples to consider as you start to build your own instructions. As I said, this should be something that's, a page or two long. This is not huge. And some really good advice that I can give you, two pieces. Think about things that you are good at, because, that's where you're an expert, and try to work those into a set of instructions. And then also have someone else test them. Have someone who's unfamiliar with the procedure or whatever read through it, or even try to mimic it and actually do whatever it is and see if they can do it. Because often the more familiar we are with something, the more likely we are to leave out steps. So that's my advice to you about instructions. That's my instruction for you about instructions. I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. Bye.